That, Patty, as I'm driving up the 5 freeway. Anyway, it is wonderful to have lots of people here today, including the gentlemen. It gives me tremendous pleasure to bring back our Karli Tanner, who is going to give us, I think, a believing update on her efforts with the Cystic Fibrosis Association, or the foundation, I'm sorry.
I'll take it.
Yours.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Good, good, good.
So the members had their meeting.
Use the mic.
Yes, ma'am. I'm getting there. I'm sorry. Let's get the mic. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Is that better? I'm a little taller than Bonnie. Does that work a little bit better? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
So good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I have such fond memories of being here last year, and I'm really honored that you invited me back, because I know you guys have these programs and you don't always invite people back. So I'm going to set a little bit of a timer so I can keep track of time here. Okay, so hey Dan. So I have a presentation ready to share with you today. But we have the special privilege of having one of the church members who has a personal relationship and a CF story to share with us. So that's why we have the chairs here. So I'm going to do a little interview like I did last time after my presentation. So excuse me if I rush through it, but I want to get to the good stuff, okay? So again, my name is Karli. Those of you that don't know me, I work for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And my title is Development Director. And so I'm here today, hi Patrick. I'm here to share some information about the CF Foundation. So let's see, all right. As a quick overview, what I'm gonna do is tell you what cystic fibrosis is and how it affects people's lives. I'm gonna share a bit about the work the foundation does, speak about what it's like living with this condition, and then we're gonna wrap up with how you can get involved if you'd like to. Okay, so how many of you have heard of cystic fibrosis? How many of you have heard from cystic fibrosis from me? Yeah, so there you go. I didn't know anything about cystic fibrosis until I started working until I applied for a job with the foundation. I had heard of the words, but I didn't really know what it was. So it's a progressive genetic disease. It affects the lungs, pancreas, digestive system, and other organs. I'm going to do a lot of education today and talk to you a little bit about the science and what really causes the illness. And it creates persistent lung infections, and it limits the ability for people who have it to breathe over time. And many people call it CF. It's an easier way to say cystic fibrosis, which is a bit of a mouthful. And it's not a type of disease that you can catch from someone else. It's inherited, and it's something that comes from parents. Both parents have to have a specific gene to create a child with CF. And people carrying this gene pass it on to their children, either by creating another carrier or by creating a person with full-blown cystic fibrosis. There's a 1 in 4 chance of creating a baby with cystic fibrosis if both parents are carriers. And today in America, 1 in 31 of us is a carrier. I was shocked by that. That statistic just came out a couple months ago in terms of my team, and I didn't realize so many of us were actually carriers for cystic fibrosis. So for a little bit of a science lesson, we all have a protein in our bodies called the Cystic Fibrosis Transmembrane Conductance Regulator protein. And it's more commonly called CFTR protein. It helps to maintain the balance of salt and water on many surfaces in the body, such as our lungs. And the disease cystic fibrosis occurs when that CFTR protein is either not made correctly or not made at all. And you can see on the screen, the image on the right is lungs of a person with cystic fibrosis. There's thick mucus that clogs the airways and traps bacteria. This leads to infections, extensive lung damage, and eventually it can result in respiratory failure, and that's how we lose people to cystic fibrosis. So it's a full body disease. On a basic level, it disrupts the movement of the salt and water in the body's cells in very dangerous ways. So although sometimes we think of it as a lung disease, it truly is a full body disease. And it affects people of all racial and ethnic groups. And in the US, there's 40,000 kids and adults that have it. And across the world, there's about 105 who've been diagnosed. Third world countries don't have all the treatments available that we do. So those who have CF want to be in the United States for the best treatment available. So the most common symptoms of CF include respiratory issues and digestive issues. So you'll see on the screen some of the most common respiratory symptoms of cystic fibrosis. That thick, sticky mucus that I talked about, it tends to build up in the airways of the lungs, it blocks airflow, and it causes lung inflammation. How many of you know what inflammation is? Anybody who's ever heard the word arthritis, we all know what inflammation is and how uncomfortable it can be. And inflammation in the lungs causes shortness of breath and a persistent cough. And that mucus provides a really fertile breeding ground for bacteria. People with CF commonly have recurrent lung infections, and it leads to more damaging lung inflammation. One particular type of bacteria that's called Pseudomonas, and people that were here on Sunday for church on Sunday heard Alicia talk about Pseudomonas with her daughter. It causes these serious lung infections, and it's very contagious from one person with cystic fibrosis to another. It's not contagious for you or me, but they're contagious to one another. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and how difficult that can be. So one of the more extreme things that some people with CF have to go through is a double lung transplant. We have one lady that I'm working with, she's a volunteer in Orange County. She's got her third set of lungs last week. She was born with one set of lungs. She had a double lung transplant before the pandemic. The lungs haven't really taken too well, and she's been very sick. She was on life support. She got her third pair of lungs last weekend. She's only 41. So I'm going to move on now to digestive symptoms, a little lesser known. These are digestive symptoms of cystic fibrosis. So that same thick mucus that characterizes CF, it builds up in the pancreas. And that's the organ near our stomach, and that normally is responsible for making the enzymes that help us digest our food. So the accumulation of mucus in the pancreas causes clogs, more inflammation, and tissue damage. And really, the damage to that organ is how CF got its name. The disease tends to cause fluid-filled growths, which are cysts, we've all heard that word before, and scarring, which is fibrosis, all in the pancreas, and that's where the term cystic fibrosis comes from. So the enzymes produced in the pancreas help to break down our food, mostly fats and starch and proteins. And people that have CF, those enzymes don't naturally occur in their body. So the enzymes can't move out of the pancreas into the digestive tract. So without enough digestive enzymes, CF patients have difficulty breaking down the food and absorbing it. So this can cause them to not get enough calories. So many times, especially with children, they're underweight and they have a hard time growing at a normal rate. So they'll be in like the 10 and 15 percentile, where traditional kids or kids who are healthier might be in the 80 or 90th percentile. So have you ever heard of anybody taking enzymes as a supplement? So people, it's like probiotics. We all have heard all the advertisements about that. When you have cystic fibrosis, because you don't have those natural enzymes, you have to take enzymes every time you eat. And I just learned this recently too. It's not just when you have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it's anytime you have a snack. So if you want a cracker, or you want to have some milk before you go to bed, or you just want a piece of cake, you have to take enzymes because that food will not properly digest and be absorbed in the body. So it's not unusual for people with CF to take upwards of 40 pills a day. Can you imagine taking 40 a day? I mean, and this is not just for adults. Children sometimes have to take that many. So little kiddos have to learn how to take pills very early on. So, all right, we're gonna do a little break here. Bonnie's gonna help me, and she's my volunteer. She's gonna pass something out. I know you've been sitting a long time today, so everybody's gonna stand up. We're gonna get a little exercise. If you can stand, if you would like to stand, we'll go that route. So people with CF describe breathing with the illness, especially as they get older and the lung starts to be more damaged. It's like breathing through a straw. So we're going to do a straw challenge. Bonnie's going to pass out. It's just barely. the challenges of breathing with cystic fibrosis like breathing through a skinny straw. So only do this if you want to. This is not a mandated exercise, but it's good for us to stretch your arms up. Let's get a little movement since we've been sitting on our booties all day, some of us. All right, so Bonnie's gonna pass out a straw, and I'm gonna set a timer, and we're gonna do 60 seconds. What you wanna try to do, you can breathe through your nose, of course, but close your lips tight around the straw, and just try to breathe through the straw. So we're gonna do a timer. Brian, don't start yet. You won't make it all the way. Maybe you will. So this is just an exercise. So if you have emphysema, COPD, you have a hard time breathing, or asthma, and you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to do it. All right, so we're gonna get a countdown going. It's a skinny little straw.
That's a martini straw.
Yeah, cocktail straw. Martini straw, that works too.
That's a coffee stir.
Pilgrims call them coffee straws. But it is a martini straw. All right, we're gonna start the countdown. 30 seconds, starting now. So hold your lips tight, just try to breathe through the straw, and you can, of course, breathe through your nose if you need to. Just try to breathe through the straw. There's a challenge online where people do this while they're working out. So that's why I had you move your arms and stand up and work out a little bit. Yeah, M. Joyce feels like I felt when I did it. So we are now at 21 seconds. 21 seconds. It's okay, I see people taking a break. When you have CF, you can't take a break. This is your everyday. If you can, some people can keep going. If you can't keep going, it's okay. The purpose of this is to really give you a glimpse of what it's like. This is how they breathe every day, all day. But you can't see it because they're used to it, but this is why the medication, the stress, the anxiety that is all compounded. We're at 50 seconds, 51, 52, 53. Y'all are good if you've been doing it the whole time. 56, 57, 59, take it off, 60 seconds.
Ooh.
Wow, I'm impressed. Y'all give yourselves a round of applause because most of you did it. So tell me how it felt. Anybody want to share how it felt?
A little bit dizzy.
Did you get dizzy? Yeah. Put your trash in. Bonnie has a little bag for you. Yeah, Lorraine, how did it feel?
It's not bad if you make up your mind. You have to breathe slowly and just let the air come in. No, you don't say, I'm not getting enough air, and you try to suck it in.
You have to think about it and be a little more intentional, right? Yeah. You have to think about it and you have to not get scared from it. Some people, I'm always scared of not being able to breathe, and my goddaughter has asthma, and it just traumatizes me. People that have CF, that's how they breathe every day, all day, and it progressively gets worse as their lungs get more damaged over time. And so that's where you get those double lung transplants and the needs for these special medications that we have. So thank you guys for participating. All right, so we're going to move on now to a little bit about what the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is and why we exist. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So our mission at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is to cure CF and to provide all people that have this illness the opportunity to lead long, fulfilling lives. And we do this by funding research and drug development. We partner with the CF community, and that's what we refer to as people who have CF or family members or caregivers. And we advance high quality specialized care. So there's 3 key areas that we're grounded in. The first one is a cure. We bring the best scientific minds and technology into CF research, and we catalyze the next generation of transformative therapies. There are therapies today that are life-changing, and we're going to hear a little bit about that from our guest speaker. Care is number 2. We apply the principles of our pioneering care model to optimize health for people with CF in the changing landscape. And then lastly, it's community. We seek new and meaningful ways to engage the community like you and engage and support the people who are living with CF. We want to expand the reach of our programs and the services that we offer to people. So we have a powerful start and a powerful foundation to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And the foundation started in 1955. How many of you remember 1955 fondly? I love that honesty. How many of you were born close or near around 1955? There we go. All right. Very great year, great season, great time. So we had parents who were mostly parents of children with cystic fibrosis, and they really believed that there was potential and hope and promise for their kids, even though they were being told their kids were not going to live to get to elementary school. They were only going to be kids. They were never going to grow up to be adults. So today, nearly 70 years later, we have been standing on their shoulders, and we have them to thank for creating this progressive movement forward. So how many have heard of the 65 Roses story? A couple of you, very good. How many of you are sick of hearing about the 65 Roses story? Thank you for not saying yes, okay. So on this screen, you'll see the three Weiss brothers. These are the kiddos that we always talk about when we talk about 65 Roses. So in 1965, one of these little boys, the one on the far left, he was eavesdropping, hearing his mom on the phone looking for money for cystic fibrosis research. She was trying to do early fundraising. And he overheard her and he says, "Mom, I know what you're doing. You're calling people about 65 roses," because he heard her say cystic fibrosis. And so since then, we've been using the term 65 roses to make it easy for children to say the name of their illness, because again, it is a mouthful. And so today, Anthony, who is the 16-month-old who's on the far right, he is still alive. He is on one of the new drugs called Trikafta that the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation helped to develop. So these are the Weiss boys, and these are the ones who are credited with 65 roses. So let's see. All right, so I'm going to go quickly through this last part. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, I'm very proud to work for this organization, and we provide funding for and accredit more than 130 CF care centers throughout the country. And the high quality of specialized care available through the Care Center network has led to this improved length and quality of life for people with this illness. And so these care centers are located at teaching and community hospitals across the country, and they offer the best treatment and care for people that have the illness. So we're very lucky in Southern California that we have quite a few care centers. We're very fortunate. However, there are families that have to travel great distances to get to the care center. You can't just go to a standard pediatrician or a standard doctor, especially those that live in the Inland Empire or live in the desert communities. You'll see on the screen Loma Linda Medical Center. We have Chalk in Orange County. There's several in Los Angeles, but there's none really close to where we are today in Pomona. And if people live far out, and also those who have limited insurance. So if any of you have ever had Kaiser or are familiar with it, the only Kaiser care center is in Los Angeles. So if you live here, you can't just go to Kaiser on Indian Hill or Kaiser in Fontana to see a specialist. You have to go to Kaiser in Los Angeles. So to keep on top of this illness, people have to maintain frequent care center visits. They go at least quarterly. So that's at least 4 times a year, and that's everybody who has it. That's so that we can maintain a watch on what their illness, how the progression of their illness is going. And so these appointments are called clinic days, and clinic days usually last several hours. And it's because the families see a whole team of people, including a pulmonologist, a respiratory therapist, a nutritionist, a GI specialist, and their case manager. That's all in one day. In addition, on the same day, they're going to have a pulmonary function test, which is called a PFT. They are going to have a sputum or throat culture where they scrape something inside, and they're going to have to do blood tests, all on the same day. This is very taxing for not only the patient, especially if you're talking about a kiddo, but it's taxing for mom and dad who have to take the day off. They have to drive far one way, spend hours, and then drive far back the other way. And usually that involves stopping for lunch, stopping for potty breaks, and it's a stressful, stressful day. So it's just part of the reality of having cystic fibrosis. So I'm moving too far ahead, so I'm going to skip this next one. So we are leading the fight in a cure, and I'm going to share a quick story, and then we're going to have our guest speaker come up. So this on the screen you see Eddie and Jennifer, and Eddie's wife has CF. They were high school sweethearts. And so today they have a home in Annapolis, Maryland. They have twin daughters. And when they first became boyfriend and girlfriend, when Eddie was just 15, the life expectancy for someone with CF was 28 years old. And that seemed like such a long way in his mind because he was only 15 years old. So as their relationship grew stronger and stronger, Eddie began to think about what CF meant to Jen and their lives together. What about college? What about marriage? Children? Today they're both in their mid-30s, and now they're very thankful for all of their time together. Eddie realizes that 40 is getting closer. When they were in their 20s, the life expectancy rose to 33, and there's been a progressive increase year after year. When they were 25, it went up to 35. When they were 33, it increased to 37. And just 2 years ago, the life expectancy was in the mid-40s. Now, mid-40s doesn't sound old to me. I don't know about y'all. But today, because of the research of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the life expectancy has been improved astronomically compared to what it was in the 50s. So today the life expectancy is 56. Now 56 doesn't sound too old to me either. And if you think about a life expectancy of only 56. And what that means is about half the people that are born between 2018 and 2022, about half of them will make it to 56. The other half will not. So what this represents is a really dramatic length and a dramatic improvement, but for people like Eddie, it's still not enough time. So real progress has been made, but there's still no cure, and lives are just cut too short. Too many lives are cut short. So at this time, I'm going to bring up our guest, and there we go. We're going to talk a little bit about how cystic fibrosis can personally affect a family. So at this time, Tom Mazur, if you'll please come up. While Tom is coming up, Lorraine has a question.
My question was, they had two girls. Did both girls have cystic fibrosis?
Their girls are both carriers. They do not have CF, but they're carriers.
Great.
I forgot to bring the VIP escort.
I'm good. I just have to lean a little bit.
Take that.
Okay.
Can we take this down, Brian, or should we? If you want to stand, you prefer to stand?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna boss. I'm gonna sit on this side, let Tom sit there. I just want to feel like Oprah. Right, so Tom, this makes me feel like Oprah Winfrey.
Thank you for having me, Oprah.
Welcome, sir. This is for you. So Tom just recently shared with me a story about his family, and Tom, just tell us a little bit about your experience with CF.
Can you hear me without the mic?
Yes.
Well, you have it in your hand.
No, use the better.
Okay, how we doing? I was 15, that was years ago, and I was driving with my father, and he was a CPA, and he was going to visit accountants. And since I was 15, I was very excited because I got to drive, and he would go in and see his accounts, and I know that the reason I was driving him that day was because that account was 2 blocks away from Tommy's on Beverly and Rampart. And anytime I could get to Tommy's in those days was a plus. My dad, when he drove, did not like sitting on his wallet. So he took his wallet out and put it on the seat of the car. He went in to speak with his client, and like any other 15-year-old, I ransacked his wallet. And I found pictures. Oh, my dad's carrying pictures. How interesting. There was a picture of me when I was little. There was a picture of my brother when he was little. And there was a picture of a little girl. And she was maybe 6, 8 months old. She had white blonde hair and looked like a perfectly adorable baby. I couldn't think of who this baby was because my cousins all had brown hair. And the fact is, my dad didn't like any of them well enough to carry their pictures. So I couldn't figure out why my dad would carry a picture of a baby that nobody knew. And so he got back in the car and I said, Dad, who's this picture of? And he just got this ashen look on his face. And he said, now you've done it. What did I do? And he explained to me that I had a sister. And she was born in 1954, a year before the CF Foundation was founded. And when she was born, At that time, they said she has cystic fibrosis, which means both you and your wife are carriers. There was no such thing as genetic testing in 1954. And so the shock of having a terminally ill child pretty much destroyed my parents. And she didn't make it to a year. There was no hope of CF babies making it to a year in those days. And as you saw with the beautiful little girl who was here on Sunday, just a beautiful child, ready to take on the world. And they watched their little girl suffocate. They decide to try again. And then they tried again with my brother. We'll hold them to account for that later. But I think they were very brave to try again, because there was no guarantee that their other children would be healthy either. I have no effects of it. My brother had no effects of it. And when I was expecting my first child, the first thing I asked the obstetrician was, could my child have cystic fibrosis? And my former wife is Japanese, and he told us that Asians don't carry the genes, which is not what Karli just said, but we leaned on that real heavily. And I have two healthy, beautiful children, one of them whom most of you know pretty well. You don't know my older girl, and she's really something. But thinking on it just now, she has had lung issues all of her life, borderline COPD, and she had cyst issues with endometriosis. And it was a vicious endometriosis, which caused her to have a complete hysterectomy before she was 35. Luckily, she was able to have children. I have two beautiful grandchildren. But this keeps going, and of course, they're carriers, and they have to be careful always. So, shall we go on with the interview?
Wasn't that great?
Thank you, Oprah.
Told you, you saved the best part. So I'm just gonna ask you one more question. You mentioned the concern that you had when you and your wife were talking about having children. And the conditions that your daughter has, they could possibly be related and a genetic thing. There are different, I don't want to say intensities, but there are some people that have cystic fibrosis, can culture the bacteria and be contagious to other people, but they don't have to take as many enzymes and they don't have as many physical manifestations. It's just like other illnesses, like some people have more severe cases. So in your family, do you know of anyone else that had cystic fibrosis, or was it something that your parents, I don't know if they were able ever to share with you, but they were told about the diagnosis of their daughter? Do you know if there was any other history or any discussions of it in your family?
As far as I know, no. Because it takes two to tango with cystic fibrosis, the rest of the family, the rest of the family,
Be nice.
the rest of the family did not have that dual genetic input. And luckily, again, my children do not, my brother does not have any children. So that I hope that at this point it starts and ends, but when my daughter was pregnant, I urged her quickly to get both her and her husband tested to make sure that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah, wonderful. Anybody have any questions for Tom?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So it touches us more than we might think. You know, when I first started working for the foundation, like I said, I didn't know anybody, but now I've met so many people that have someone in their family, and many times if it was a past generation, they lost the battle. They didn't have access to all of the technology and all of the treatments that we have today. So, thank you, Tom.
I will a little postscript on this. In the way that it's affected my life, which is negligible at best, because I did not know my sister. But I do believe that my parents reacted to me in a different way than they would have if they didn't have this horror in their lives. And so, you know, I look back on this and I can justify it that way. But it was destroying to them, and the way they looked at life, and the way they treated their children. They treated both myself and my brother with great distance. Because just by the way my dad reacted when I asked him about my sister, the pain was still there, and that was 20 years later. And he couldn't even bring himself to talk about it. So I'm sure that this was guarding against. So even though it didn't affect me physically, that effect, of course, leads on and on through that. So it was quite a revelation to me, a family history that I knew nothing about. And, you know, so there we go. Also, people will hear this story, and I've told it a couple of times. Hello? And they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And in fact, I'm sorry because I didn't get to know her. Both of my cousins, who are girls, were born within 2 months of my sister. So not only did my father and mother watch their beautiful daughter die, they watched their nieces thrive at exactly the same age. One of them became a major movie producer. The other became one of the most infamous lawyers you've ever heard of. The infamous Marcia Clark is my cousin. And if you didn't like her on TV, you would hate her in person.
Oh my goodness!
But that's, and again, my father dreadfully disliked her. So I knew that he wouldn't carry her picture in the wallet. There we go, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Let's give Tom a round of applause.
Thank you, Oprah.
That was so much fun. I enjoyed that. All right, so I'm going to wrap up in just a few more slides. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Watch your
Karli?
slide. Yes, question. Ms. Rita, go for it.
I'm wondering how often you feel that cystic fibrosis goes undiagnosed? And is there something that one should bring to the attention of their healthcare professionals that would make them think this is a good idea to test for?
That's a great question. So in the state of California, there is a mandate for genetic testing now. It started, I want to say, in the 80s and 90s, so it's fairly new. But there is genetic testing that's done. If there's any indication or you think somebody in the family may have had it, you can request extra testing. But anytime they do a test on babies called a sweat test, and they will usually they're diagnosed within a few days of being born. It doesn't happen always though. Alicia and Quinn, who were here on Sunday, and I'm not sure if she talked to many of you, I know she talked to me and Sarah. So Alicia has 3 children. Her oldest is Seth. He's about 6. He's a carrier. Alicia knew from having him that she and her husband were both carriers. They have their second child, so they knew there was a risk, and that's Quinn. She's 4, and she has CF. They have a 6-month-old, so their third child, and she was very concerned. Like I said earlier, it's a 1 in 4 chance that the child will have CF, so she's kind of like, well, we already got our that one, so maybe it'll be okay. The baby girl is Reese. Reese is here. She's been doing fine, but she's tiny. Reese, over the last couple weeks, has been having some major health issues. She's having some GI issues, no normal bowel movements, and she's just not gaining weight. And so they took her in, and the doctor said she's showing all the signs of having CF, but her sweat test shows that she's negative. So they started doing additional blood tests and additional testing. And so the family just hasn't been given a diagnosis yet. She's 6 months old. That's late today for a diagnosis. So hopefully that answers your question. However, there are people who have like that more mild form of CF. There's one gentleman I know, he wasn't diagnosed until he was 12. They thought he had asthma, and he was just weak and just kind of frail, but he struggled. And then at 12, he really started having a lot of physical manifestations, a lot of symptoms, and they finally were able to properly diagnose him. Okay, thank you for the question. All right, so let's keep going with the slides. I'm going to share a quick little video.
My name is Ryan Morales and I'm 12 years old. My favorite sports to play is football. I really like basketball. I love to be outside carving stuff, just messing about.
Ryan has a light about him. Everyone he meets, he touches. He loves life. April 20th, 2005, I remember the exact date. And I remember the time I got the call, 5 p.m., confirming in fact that he had cystic fibrosis. Hope is a very important word that we use a lot in our family. Without hope, you really don't have anything.
Living with cystic fibrosis is a challenge because I can have my good days and my bad days. I need to manage my lungs, my stomach, and my sinuses. And for the average person that wakes up and heads to school, I need to wake up much earlier to get my treatments done, and I have to stay on top of it. The treatments can increase to 4 to 5 times a day, which can be a pain because I try my best to get all my treatments done, but when that day is over, another treatment.
You always have to stay 10 steps ahead of this illness. The minute CF gets a leg up on you, you're in trouble. Your job as a parent becomes to teach them how to own that. You're there running that race with them, but that you're trying to get them to cross that finish line independently.
You don't never want to lose hope because as soon as you lose hope, you're going to stop taking your medications, your treatments. Once that is done, then what else can you do to save your life pretty much? You got to always stay on top of it and never lose hope.
The CF Foundation is extremely dedicated to advancements. They fight to get these treatments and they get the drug companies to make these advancements.
I would love to go to college, of course. Maryland University, love to be on the football team. My mom went to Maryland University. I would love to follow in her footsteps. I'll probably like to study maybe about astronomy a little bit, study about the planets in our world and how they came to be.
I want Ryan to know that the sky's the limit. There's no limit to his dreams. College, marriage, children. Cystic fibrosis is a part of him, but it doesn't define him. It doesn't define who he is. We have to give back because we have to help the foundation fight as well. We have to be raising money. It's like when you throw a rock in a pond and the ripple effect. If we keep talking, those ripples are going to stretch out to everyone, and so that we can get the funding that we need to help find a cure.
This is a 1,000,000-mile run. It goes across the world, different planets. We all have to fight, join together, find a cure for this illness, and we can do this.
So that's Brian's story. So very different story than a lot of the ones we've heard. So thank you guys so much for listening today. I have a couple more things I just want to share with you. My hope today after this presentation is that you will leave inspired to get involved, to help out and to do something. You may not have a family member or personal connection to CF, but what we have happening is we have a really cool group of young people who belong to this church who have taken on CF as their project for the season of Lent. And so I think it would be really cool if we could get inspired and motivated to support what they're doing. The other angle on that, and I've talked to some different parents, we haven't quite figured out the wording, But kids that come to our events that don't have CF, their parents end up leaving these events with them and being so thankful that they have a healthy kid. And it's a perspective that all parents can appreciate. You know, just understanding kids can be a pain in the you-know-what, and they have all kinds of health issues, they have all kinds of other problems. But when you see a child that has an illness that's a terminal illness, and you see a child that has to do these types of medical treatments at home 4 and 5 times a day, like Brian said, you know, putting that mask on and inhaling solution so he can breathe, and that vest shakes up the mucus. You know, that's medical treatment that a kid is having to do to himself every day. So there's an element of being thankful of having our own health and then having healthy kids in our lives. So it's one way to look at this and one way to inspire people to get involved. So a real easy way to do it, we have our Pilgrim Sparks team. The Pilgrim Sparks have established a team for the upcoming walk that we're doing in Ontario. It's called Great Strides. And so you guys have all heard the term Pilgrim Sparks. And so they have basically created a challenge for themselves. They're going to walk at the event in support of kids like Ryan and Quinn, and their goal is to raise $2,000. It's a lofty goal, but they did it last year. They didn't raise quite as much, but they raised money last year, and they participated, and they were inspired to do more this year. So an easy way for you to show your support is to show some love to them. You can register to be a walker with them. You don't have to actually show up and walk if you don't want to. I already had some people say, I don't want to walk a 5K. But you can register to show your support and put your name on the list with their team. You can also help them with fundraising. You can be a virtual walker, and that's basically just putting your name on the list. And I'll be happy to help anybody sign up for Pilgrim Sparks if they want to during lunch. And on the screen, you see a lot of different ways to get involved. There's volunteer opportunities, there's ambassador opportunities, there's ways to contribute. The easiest way is to participate in one of our local events. There's also legacy giving. We have people that give gifts and make a big impact in their IRA or estate planning. So there's a lot of options that you can get involved in an easy way. So Great Strides I mentioned. How many of you have heard of Great Strides? Okay, very good. I know Brian had to raise his hand because he was our DJ at Great Strides last year. So it was a fun party. It was a very fun party. So we do these events all across the country. And I wanted to kind of circle back to something I said earlier about the 6 feet apart idea. The reason we do Great Strides, we do all kinds of events. We do golf tournaments and galas and dinners. Great Strides is our signature event because that's the only event that we do where multiple people who have CF can show up. It's always outdoors. You cannot be 6 feet, you cannot be less than 6 feet apart from another person with cystic fibrosis if you have cystic fibrosis because of Pseudomonas and other bacteria. When you're outdoors, you can stay 6 feet apart, you can keep an eye on each other, you don't have to worry about it as much. And that's why we have Great Strides. So we can have families all come together to celebrate after the end of a great year. They come back year after year, they get to fellowship, moms get to talk to other moms, and it's only because we have the model we have. It's all outdoors. We take a lot of precautions. And I hope I have the right slide up. So we take precautions at Great Strides to protect people with CF from other people with CF. Quinn, you guys saw, she's 4. She's at that perfect age where you want to run up to other kids and hug and say, oh, she's so cute, let's play. And you have to watch that. Part of my job is to educate young parents on keeping an eye on their kiddos at Great Strides. We take as many precautions as we can. We have them wear what we call fighter shirts. Anyone with CF, we call a CF fighter, and so they're purple. That's kind of the signature color. And so they're easily identifiable just by looking at them. We have stickers that say I'm a fighter, and we try to educate the families so that they can monitor that. And it's just a really great day of solidarity, and we do our best to kind of keep an eye on things, but there's always a risk. We actually have families that have walked with Great Strides, they've fundraised, they come to other events, and they never bring their kids. They will not let their kids be even in the same area if they know. They're that cautious, and they have every right to be. Other parents have taken risks. We're going to see a movie this Sunday after church called 5 Feet Apart. There are people who have CF who don't want to be isolated and alone. Because if you imagine, I have the illness, you have the illness, but we can't sit in a room and have coffee and talk about it. I can't tell you how crazy my mom was and made me do my own treatments, and your mom babysat you and did all these things for you until you were 25. You can't have that shared experience. Today we have Zoom and we have social media, so there's much more communication than there ever has been in history, but it's been a very isolating illness. And so that's something that is part of the mental health issues with having the illness, having this condition. And so the movie 5 Feet Apart talks about two teenagers that both have CF that decide to take some risks. And it has been known to happen. So it's just another part of the illness that I just try to share with people. We take as many precautions as we can at our events. This is an example of how we set up at Great Strides. We spend a lot of time strategically planning. We want families to come out. So if I have 5 or 6 families that all have a kid Quinn's age, I can't have them all seated next to each other. So we space out their tents. So we tell them, your name is on the tent, this is for your family, and about 30 feet away is the next family. So we have to spend a lot of time thinking about these things. Can't do that in a ballroom. So if you consider joining us at Great Strides to show your support, I think it would be awesome. This is a couple of photographs. You'll see Quinn. This is Alicia and Quinn and their team from last year. She's got on her little purple jumpsuit. She put on her purple t-shirt later, but Alicia does a good job of keeping her, keeping an eye on her. And it's vital for our mission that church groups and civic organizations and neighborhoods really show up and show these kids that they're not forgotten and show them that we love them. So if you have any questions for me, now is the time. Any questions? Yes, Arthur.
What is the hope or expectation that 56 year age, average age can be extended or improved?
What was your first part? Was what is the hope that it can be extended?
Yeah.
It's been, we have great hope that it can be extended. I started working with the foundation 2 years ago, and it was the life expectancy was 53 at that time. And the very first event that I worked, it was a huge deal. And because it was just a little bit over 50, that was a huge milestone. The team even went so far as to buy balloons, a 5 and a 3. And we made this huge announcement, and I had to be the one to walk on the stage with the big 5 and the 3. It was so embarrassing. So it was a milestone for the foundation, and it was something that families celebrate. I felt weird about it even that day. 53 that's not an acceptable number. 56 is not an acceptable number. But in less than 2 years, it's increased by 3 years. And you heard the story about Eddie and Jennifer. It's increased and increased. There's no cure. And so all we can do is hope that the medications that we currently have will help prolong their lives. And I think the newest medication that we have that came out in about 2017 called Trikafta, that one, people with CF are calling it life-changing, and they're calling it a miracle drug. It basically convinces the gene that it should act right. But you have to take it. You have to take a pill multiple times a day, actually multiple pills multiple times a day. And it's extraordinarily expensive. Not everybody can afford it. Not everyone qualifies for it. There are different mutations of CF. So there's over 2,000 mutations. So there's kind of your standard that most people have. But there are some that we call nonsense mutations, where they're unique and they're unusual and they're not studied as often because they don't show up in the population as often. And so the hope is that we can extend that life expectancy, but the real hope is we can find a cure. Thank you for the question. So that concludes my presentation, unless anybody has any other questions. Thank you guys for having me.
We have our small token.
I have a beautiful envelope that you gave me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for the donation on behalf of the auxiliary. Thank you so much.
And everybody should follow you to lunch.
Do I have to cook lunch too?
No.
Yes, yes.
But join us in the gym for lunch.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much for the donation, auxiliary. Thank you. All right, very good.
You can take care of that.
I shall take care of that. Yes, ma'am.
My box and